Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Friday, September 12th, 2025 episode of On Iowa Politics. This week on the podcast, I'm going to talk to Althea Cole and Todd Dorman about the assassination this week of Charlie Kirk, and then we'll get into a little bit of Iowa political news, too. Hello, everyone. I'm Erin Murphy, the Des Moines Bureau Chief for the Gazette in Cedar Rapids. We have the whole gang with us here this week. We got the Gazette Deputy Bureau Chief Tom Barton. Hello, Tom.
Hello, Erin.
Lead Des Moines Bureau Chief Maya Marchel is here. Hello, Maya.
Hello, Erin.
We have Sarah Watson of the Quad City Times. Hello, Sarah.
Greetings, Erin.
Jared McNett of the Sioux City Journal is with us. Hello, Jared.
Hello, Erin.
And then we have our Gazette columnists. First, Althea Cole. Hello, Althea.
Hi, Erin.
And Todd Dorman. Hello, Todd.
Hello.
All right, so obviously we're going to start this week with the horrific events of this past Wednesday when conservative personality Charlie Kirk was assassinated at a public event in Utah. You all know what happened, so I'm not going to get into any of the details of this awful tragedy. Althea, I'll just come straight to you for your thoughts and reaction in this dark moment in our country.
At the time we're recording this, it's over 24 hours past the shooting, over 24 hours since we've learned that he did not survive the shooting. And my thoughts continue to be pretty jumbled. And I'm going to write, a column for this coming Sunday about this. I don't even know where to start. What we can at least assume, as of the recording of this, they have not found the shooter. They're pursuing an identity. They're pursuing based on the picture. We can nevertheless assume that Charlie Kirk was targeted for being Charlie Kirk. He has been quite famous for quite a while now. He actually kind of rose to fame starting as early as 2012 when he was still a teenager getting out of high school. And instead of going to West Point, he applied, he did not get in. And so he decided not to go to college and instead start this organization to engage young conservatives in the political process. And, all of these years later, he is I got to start saying which is a bit of a pill to swallow. He was one of the most recognizable political figures, both on the left and right. And with political notoriety, of course, comes a lot of unwanted attention. He was pretty good at what he did. He was the founder of Turning Point USA, which now has over 3,500 chapters nationwide on college campuses and in high schools to really engage young conservatives in the political process. And growing up, I'm a millennial. And so it wasn't that millennials weren't part of the political process, but millennials went very, very, very much to the left in the coming of Barack Obama in 2006, 7, 2008, when he was elected, and again in 2012. So I think Charlie Kirk was kind of the response to that, realizing that young people were just not going for conservative candidates and conservative political positions, even though there are still a lot of young people out there who are conservative. And we've seen that resurgence under political leaders like Charlie Kirk. He attended a talk at the University of Iowa in October of 2019. It's hard to believe that was almost 6 years ago. And he was already deemed controversial then. And, as a conservative and having a lot of friends in the conservative political sphere, we talk all the time about how, conservatives are always seem to be labeled as controversial much more easily than progressives or liberals or Democrats, both in the mainstream media and I would say in the new media as well. So that's kind of that's not directed at any one particular outlet or any one particular genre of media. But given in the age of Donald Trump, Charlie Kirk was one of the leaders who engaged young people in the conservative political process. Part of the reason that young people had fallen out of the political process is not necessarily because conservative ideals weren't cool to them. It's just that the ones to whom they weren't cool were very, very vocal about the supposed controversy behind conservative positions. All of a sudden, things that were not at all controversial 10, 20 years ago, such as, should males be allowed to use female bathrooms and vice versa? All of a sudden, if you had a problem with that, it wasn't that you were incorrect or that you were wrong. It was that you were bad, that you were transphobic. If you were concerned about immigration, it wasn't merely that you weren't looking at the big picture or that you were incorrect. It was that you're xenophobic. If you believe that laws, particularly in large cities, should be enforced against low-level crimes such as theft or assault or trespassing, that in and of itself took on kind of a connotation of were you discriminating against certain people just by wanting laws enforced. And we saw a lot of those frustrations resurge, but to his credit, especially in the last several years, Kirk, rather than merely capitalize on the anger and continue to foment that anger, he got involved in the conversation. And, a lot of people knew him as that guy that, that liberals and conservatives alike would like to have debate with. So that's what a lot of his events were. Public microphones, giving people the chance to come up to a microphone and debate him. Sometimes it was, I'm a conservative just like you. What kind of advice do you have to give me on, how to survive on a college campus, which college campuses across the United States, they are unabashedly left. Even people on the left know that, admit it. I wrote a column about a Yale editorial just back in December saying, we're jealous of conservatives because their ideas are much more challenged and they get the better end of the stick as a result of that. But it's also, at the same time, it's difficult to survive. So you've got conservative students wanting advice on how to get engaged, how to survive what can be an extremely difficult environment for a conservative on a college campus. And then you've also got people coming up to the microphone who disagree with him, who abhor everything he says, who dislike him personally, and yet he engages with them as well in debate. And so it was Charlie Kirk yesterday who was targeted, but it was everybody who came out to see his message and, see him debate with people who both agree and disagree. Everybody who showed up was punished for wanting to participate in this free exchange of ideas. And, as tragic as his assassination is, and at this point I feel pretty comfortable calling it an assassination, that's the biggest tragedy of the day. But also tragic is the fact that a lot of people are realizing it, maybe for the first time, maybe for the second time, if they remember just, how just over a year ago, we had an assassination attempt on the president that a lot of people saw. They're realizing how serious these events can be when they're supposed to be positive, lighthearted exchanges of ideas and opinions. So, as I said, Charlie Kirk came to Iowa in 2019. The state of Iowa, public campuses on the state of Iowa have hosted other conservative speakers who, of course, also have the word controversial attached to a description of that speaker. I've seen some pretty wild stuff. And, there have been times when I've worried about safety as well. So I think that's what's got me a little bit rattled. If it can happen in Utah, it can happen in Iowa. At the same time, I don't want to falsely portray any public university or any college campus in Iowa as not having their eye on the ball when it comes to security issues. Having attended multiple events down at the University of Iowa, I have never had that impression that they're not on the ball. And knowing the severity of some of the actions that have been committed by protesters at these events, such as for Daily Wire personality Matt Walsh, or a detransitioner who, a biological female who thought she was male and then transitioned back to female, Chloe Cole. Just some of the stuff that happened during and after those events, knowing what security presence was there and the lengths to which they went to make sure that everybody stayed safe, I feel really confident in the state of Iowa that events like these will continue, even in spite of what happened yesterday on a college campus. But I think a lot of us have realized, it's still very sobering, because you aren't going to go to an event I can't believe I'm saying this. You aren't going to go to an event if you're going to stand in front of the barrier, be all excited to see this person whose ideas you're intrigued by. If you think that you might see that person catch a bullet in the neck right in front of you, that is a horribly traumatic experience. You're not going to go to an event and sit behind the president if you think that there's a chance that the bullet that was meant for him is going to hit you. And unfortunately, people did die at the Butler, Pennsylvania event back in July of 2024. So that's how you chill free speech and the free and open exchange of ideas, when you make people scared to participate. So a lot of conservatives, and I think a lot of progressive, leftist, liberal Democrats, I think this is kind of a wake-up call. But rather than saying, we're going to cool it for a while, we're not going to talk about these kind of things, I think, if anything, it's this recommitment to the free and open exchange of ideas. So what happened to Charlie Kirk was tragic. We could do the whole thoughts and prayers for his family thing, because I think we all actually mean that. But if something good has to come out of this, I think a lot of people are seeing what happened, asking themselves, what do I have to say? What do I have to think? What kind of ideas do I have to exchange with somebody who doesn't think like me? And I think that they have only realized that they have to be even more committed to that open dialogue that he championed so much.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that, Althea. And and thank you also. I should have done that kind of bookkeeping off the top as we talk about what's going on as far as the investigation, all that. We're recording at mid-afternoon here Thursday, so that, we don't know what we know at that point, and may have changed depending on when you're listening to this. Todd, let me go to you now. What, as Althea said, as we record, it's been about 24 hours since this happened. What's been going through your mind in that time?
Well, I mean, Althea said some stuff, or said a lot of things that I agree with. When I heard about this yesterday afternoon, it made me angry. I mean, that was my first emotion about it, because, I mean, obviously it's a despicable act, for one thing. You've heard a lot of people say this has no place in politics, and I wish that were true, but sometimes political violence bubbles just below the surface, and sometimes it explodes. But I think despicable is a good word. There are all sorts of, we're getting traction out of all the words that are in that family of words after a tragedy. But I've been a father of two young children, and they may be too young to know exactly what's going on, but dad's not coming home anymore, and that's a scar that's just not going to heal. I mean, that's the Charlie Kirk is a human being, and killing him was wrong for all sorts of reasons, even if you didn't like his politics. And this gunman decided, I think, we don't know the exact motives, but I think this gunman decided that he was going to silence Charlie Kirk. And anyone that is inclined to present their political viewpoints in the public square, knowing that there's going to be people that disagree with you maybe vehemently, I mean, that's I think Althea used the word chilling. I think it should chill us to the bone, because we've just seen hatred. Again, we don't know the motive exactly, but we've just seen hatred turn into violence. And it was hatred that, came from disagreement with what Charlie Kirk said and stood for, and the opinions that he gave in the public square. And it's wrong. It's wrong on every level. Like I said, there's been people saying that there's no room for this violence in politics, and I definitely agree with that sentiment. But if you do look at the history of the United States, we've had political violence with us since, before the United States became the United States. I mean, just the assassinations, the Ku Klux Klan, in its different iterations, in the 19th and 20th centuries. The civil rights battle, the violence that came with that, the lynchings and the various ways people were harmed and killed, including people that came down as allies to help. It's just, I don't know. I'm worried that we can't separate it. I'm worried that it's still going to be acceptable to some people out there that this is the way to go. And as long as we continue to dehumanize our opponents, that makes it a lot easier, because if someone just comes to symbolize something you hate, they lose their humanity, and it's much easier to do violence. And I think that's probably what happened in the case of Charlie Kirk. I'm sure there are unfortunately a lot of people out there, we've seen it on social media, who were saying basically, well, he created this atmosphere that ended up killing him. It's like, nobody deserves to die for their political views. I mean, it doesn't matter what he said. It doesn't matter who he opposed or what laws he wanted or what groups he aggravated. He didn't deserve to die. So I think that's what we all have to keep in mind. I wish politicians would step away from the demonization, but I know it's so intertwined in some of these issues, like immigration for one, and there's a lot of issues that demonization is carves a path to. So yeah, it was despicable, and it makes me angry, and it frightens me. And I think we, like Althea said, we got to move forward. I don't expect people to abandon their political views because this happened, but I expect them to at least develop some respect for the people that oppose what they're saying.
I would like to add, as far as, I've heard phrases like tone down the rhetoric, watch what you say. I don't think that, to Todd's point, that, nobody deserves to be killed, and they don't deserve or earn their fate because of the things that they say. It's just as easy to say that, once we know more, and again, we're recording this on Thursday afternoon. Once we know more about the killer's motives, I would expect that there would be claims coming out that, certain kinds of ideology, convinced the shooter to do what he did. We're going to assume that the shooter's male until we know otherwise. I don't think that any ideology on any side of the aisle is responsible for somebody's choice to do what was done to Charlie Kirk yesterday. Period. End of sentence. If you are concerned with the tone and temperature of the political atmosphere at this time, the control that every single person has is over themselves. And the pieces of advice I give, I'm going to give them in my blunt Althea Cole style. Number one, stay the hell off social media. Number two, turn your TV the hell off from cable news. If you turn your TV on to MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, even News Nation, which bills itself as a much more moderate and definitely more palatable source, you start, when you wake up in the morning and then you have it on while you're at home all day, especially if you're retired and you work from home, and you're seeing the same stories over and over and over, oftentimes just with different spin and different commentary. And everything is just so laden with commentary now. Now, I like commentary. I get paid for commentary. But between cable news and social media, it just becomes a petri dish for really, really, really strong emotions that people don't always know how to handle. And I think collectively, we contribute to the overall hysteria that then some people who are genuinely crazy and genuinely dangerous and looking to harm people, I think that hysteria kind of elevates their sense of desire a bit. Again, nobody is singularly responsible. I don't even want to go as far as to say that we are collectively responsible for the hysteria that feeds into this. But I think it is not good for any of us when unfortunate things happen like this, that we are glued to our phones or our laptops or our televisions for cable news 24 hours a day. Social, news organizations like ours, like the Gazette, like the Waterloo City, or like all of our publications, the Quad City Times, the Mason City Globe Gazette, the Sioux City Journal. I'll let Erin say all those later. Publications like ours, people with brains come to us to learn and discern. Social media is for people with feelings to go opine and express. I say this as a person who is paid to comment. There is such thing as too much commentary and not enough reporting and learning. And so I think that is something that everybody should consider. And again, stay the hell away from social media. Keep your TV turned off as much as possible to cable news. Doesn't mean that you can't consume either. I am a consumer of both, but please do it responsibly. And if you're posting 17 times a day on how much you hate Trump or you hated Biden or how Kamala Harris is a lush, then it's time to back away from the smartphone and the social media apps.
Everything in moderation, right? That's and to that, to put a final pin on that point too, Althea, it's also the bubble that people create for themselves, right? The algorithm feeds, reinforces, and that's a whole thing we could spend a separate 40 minutes on. Althea and Todd, thank you both for your thoughts on that. Before we move on, speaking of the timing, and literally right before we hit the record here button here, Tom came across a little bit of news on this, so forgive what will be a very brief report on this, because literally just heard about it and this hasn't been flushed out. But Tom, we got Congresswoman Miller Meeks with a thought or a suggestion here related to this. Tell us about that.
Yeah, just before we started recording, she had posted on X, formerly Twitter, pushing the University of Iowa to name its new Center of Intellectual Freedom after Charlie Kirk, the GOP activist who was shot and killed Wednesday while speaking at a college campus in Utah. She said that the University of Iowa should, and its Center for Intellectual Freedom should live up to its name by honoring who she calls a true defender of speech and open debate, saying that Charlie Kirk dedicated his life to advancing intellectual freedom, empowering students, and challenging what she says is the cancel culture mob that seeks to silence dissent, and says that that's why she's strongly supporting renaming that center at the University of Iowa in honor of Charlie Kirk, saying that it would be a lasting tribute that would inspire generations of Iowans to, quote, stand boldly for liberty and the truth.
All right. So obviously we'll keep an eye on that and circle back on that in future episodes.
I interrupt really quick? I'm sorry, Erin.
No, not at all. Please, sir.
That's really interesting because Charlie Kirk did have some history on the University of Iowa campus in the last 6 or 7 years. And I'm just, hearing this, so I'm trying to remember all the details, but he had tried to come to campus, and then the local chapter had opposed his visit because it was after Molly Tibbetts was killed by somebody who was here illegally. And if I remember correctly, I believe the local Turning Point USA chapter actually resigned in protest. Some of the officers did. And so forgive me if I'm remembering this a little bit wrong. I will double check this, but so that is
no, I don't think you are. And if I remember right, and somebody please correct me, that was one of the genesis points for what ultimately led to the Center of Intellectual Freedom as creation, as State House Republicans sort of used that moment as an example of their concern that conservative voices were being silenced on college campuses, and why ultimately we need more robust and more even discussion on campuses, which is the whole basis of the Center for Intellectual Freedom. But please somebody fact check me if I'm also misremembering there.
I will add to that with the whole Molly Tibbetts thing. My understanding is that at least a couple of those kids were friends with Molly Tibbet. I don't know if it was specifically Kirk himself. When I spoke with people, and mind you, this was in 2020, I would say early March of 2020, right before the pandemic. The friends in the conservatives orbit with whom I spoke, my understanding that a lot of that was instigated and fomented by Candace Owen, who is, I would assume that she maintained some sort of friendship with Charlie Kirk, but she left Turning Point USA, I think in 2022 at the latest. Seems to have a habit of wearing out her welcome everywhere she goes. She went to the Daily Wire with Ben Shapiro, and then resigned for a new opportunity, despite also having some significant differences of opinion. She's gone kind of full wackadoodle, if you don't mind my saying so. I never liked her, but I think a lot of the dust up between Turning Point USA activists at the University of Iowa was more with Candace Owens and not necessarily with Charlie Kirk. I think there was also some kind of confusion about the technical aspects of the arrangement of his coming to campus. So yeah, it was interesting. And he does have history at the University of Iowa. I don't think he was as unwelcome as the resignations might suggest, but yeah, some history there.
Yeah, I was just looking at the Daily Iowan coverage from the time, and so the board resigned in 2018 after declining an invitation from the organization's national leadership to visit campus and speak about immigration after Molly Tibbetts' killing. But then he did come in 2019. So he did end up actually visiting the campus.
Right. Yep. I remember that as well. And by the way, Sarah Watson, Daily Iowan alum, going back to her paper's archives to dig up that info. Okay. Let's move on here. We still have a job to do covering the biggest political stories in Iowa over the past week. And one of those from this past week actually came last Friday, shortly after last week's podcast dropped. So we didn't get a chance to talk about it then. And that was President Donald Trump's endorsement of Ashley Hinson in Iowa's newly open U.S. Senate election. Jared, I've been waiting all week to ask you this question because I know the answer and I can't wait to hear it. We're going to have maybe a first on the On Iowa Politics podcast. Jared, does this endorsement matter?
Maybe.
Yo, come on.
If any endorsement, and I think I've said this before when we were talking about Trump endorsing somebody, if any endorsement does matter in a Republican primary, that's the one endorsement that does matter above any other possible endorsement you could get, state or federal, I would say. I think that's more than safe to say. I think not, and I don't want to spoil too much since Tom's going to be talking about it. I think it matters more because of what it takes away from who is running against Ashley Hinson, which again, Tom can get into more. I think the bigger thing, and I have also talked about this before, even though again, I am very, not bullish, bearish, right? Bearish would be the,
right.
yeah.
Right.
Even though I'm very bearish on these, kinds of things, having as many endorsements all rolling out at the same time, which is what Ashley Hinson had last week, because she had, John Thune, the Senate Majority Leader. She had Tim Scott, who's a very high-ranking Republican senator, and just a bevy of other senators and reps. When you have all of that all at once, even if any one of those in particular doesn't matter, or even if none of them matter altogether, it does at least show that you have together, basically, for lack of a better word. I'm sorry.
But it's awesome. By the way, sidebar, I can't wait to listen to the podcast now and decide and learn what our curse filter is, whether that's bleeped out or not. Becky's got some work ahead of her. Thanks for that, Jared.
Apologies, Becky, but I can't think of a better way to say it than that. Your ducks in a row. I could have said that. I could have said your ducks in a row. But no, that's what it demonstrates, if nothing else. And obviously you want to be in that kind of shape when you're in a primary, that you're able to get all these people together very quickly to coalesce around you, because that's the whole name of the game in a primary in particular. So yes, it sort of matters.
All right, so we've made a lost Ark of the Covenant level discovery here in an endorsement that actually does matter in an election. So that merits further discussion. And all kidding aside, it actually does merit further discussion for the very reasons that Jared started to touch on there, and we'll get into that now because of the reaction of fellow Republican candidate Jim Carlin, who believes he is the strongest supporter of Trump in the primary, and he. I think safe to say was disappointed in President Trump's endorsement of Congresswoman Hinson. Tell us a little bit more about what former state lawmaker Jim Carlin had to say.
Yeah, so it definitely takes wind out of the sails of Carlin's campaign. Trump wasted no time giving Hinson his, quote, complete and total endorsement. And so, the question is, or I guess I should say, the thought is that move is, meant to essentially effectively lock up the primary. And, now the question is, does Jim Carlin still have room to run a viable grassroots campaign? So Carlin kind of came out swinging after Trump's endorsement and blasted Hinson as a, quote, phony, arguing that she lacks credibility with Iowa conservatives. He said in a statement that, quote, Hinson never supported Trump and didn't say one word on his behalf until after the 2024 caucuses, and said that she's an actress reading DC script, that she's not a conservative, not a America First supporter, and certainly not MAGA. And that's Carlin's words there. The Sioux City attorney and the former state senator also criticized Hinson's record, citing her vote to certify the 2020 election, her support of former Congresswoman Liz Cheney as House Republican Conference Chair, and backing for codifying same-sex marriage. It's worth noting that Hinson, however, supported Cheney's ouster from that position as House Republican Conference Chair in 2021 after Cheney called out Trump and fellow Republicans for spreading false claims about the 2020 election. Hinson and other top House Republicans advocated for New York Congresswoman Elise Stefanik to replace Cheney in that House GOP leadership position. But all of this, is Carlin trying to position himself as a grassroots conservative alternative to Hinson's DC-backed bid. And, Hinson's endorsements from not only Trump, but, she also picked up endorsements this week from former Iowa Governor Terry Branstad. She picked up an endorsement from Iowa Republican Congresswoman Marinette Miller-Meeks, and GOP leadership in Washington and a bunch of Republican state lawmakers. It essentially shows that she's the establishment favorite, right? But again, you have Carlin trying to frame himself as the true grassroots conservative. And the question is, which side of the Iowa GOP is stronger right now? Is this now kind of shaping up as kind of another test of whether the Iowa base wants polished candidates or purists? And so I don't know. We'll see how that plays out. But it's Carlin's criticisms in trying to paint Hinson as a phony and not a true MAGA supporter or Trump supporter, really kind of falls flat when the guy ends up endorsing you, right?
Right.
I mean, the one person's stamp of approval who matters in this debate just gave it to Ashley Hinson. So, I don't know how much Carlin's criticisms of calling Hinson a phony, I don't know how those are going to land. Given Trump's backing, and given the blessings for Hinson's campaign that we've seen from just a whole host of Republicans and conservatives across the state. So, I mean, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see kind of how these intra-party purity tests play with Republican voters who want to win a general election. I mean, is it in Republicans' interest, to, have these kind of intra-party feuds or fights, or is it more important to focus on unifying and coalescing and shifting attention to the Democrats and making sure that they can stave off, Democrats' opportunity to pick up what is now an open seat in what's going to be a really closely contested 2026 midterm election?
Yeah,
I kind of feel bad for Jim Carlin, because here he had phony Joni all loaded up, and now Joni didn't run, and now he can't think of anything that that rhymes with Ashley. Maybe he'll have to work that out. But
I want to add to something that Tom said.
Yeah.
So this is not the first time that Jim Carlin has kind of gotten the shaft from the president. He ran also to challenge Chuck Grassley in a primary leading up to the 2022 general election. And I don't remember if he spoke at the Trump rally. I'm pretty sure that Senator Carlin did speak at the Trump rally in October 2021. It was outdoors at the state fairgrounds. I was there with friends, and we were smart. We got bleachers, so it was bearable. But I know that Chuck Grassley was there because that was the night that President Trump offered his endorsement to Senator Grassley, and a grateful Senator Grassley accepted in front of thousands and thousands of supporters, many of them Iowa Republicans. And my friends and I just saw Jim Carlin just kind of walk off like dejected. So at least we have not seen the dejected walk off, unless he continues to post on social media the written form of a dejected walk off. But yeah, them's the breaks.
Yeah. I was there that night too. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jared.
I went back and was reading my one of my stories from 2022 from one of the events that Jim Carlin did, and it is almost exactly the same playbook, because at the event when he was at Sergeant Bluff that I covered, he talked about Grassley being a rhino, a Republican in name only, and he also went after Grassley for not sticking up for President Trump enough. So it's basically the same thing, but 2.0 this go round.
I wonder
I
if
don't know
Jim.
the smile through all this, but this happens at every Republican primary of a big race. You've got your deep conservative loyalists who are always part of the county organization, and they go to every county meeting and rhino. But ultimately, they end up voting for the rhino when the rhino wins the primary and goes on to the general. Memories.
I wonder if Jim Carlin would have a better chance of securing an endorsement if he got on TV, was a TV broadcaster, maybe did a little TV show somewhere. A little experience in TV might catch Trump's notice more.
The president does like his TV. We know that.
Well, there are. He is in the legal business. There have been ads for him in the past, so sort of ambiently, at least, people know his name that way.
Yeah.
I keep wanting to call him George, so that's my problem.
Oh man. All right. We're going to finish up this week with a little tease to a series of stories that are coming up from our Maya Marchel Hoff and Sarah Watson. They've been working on this project for a while this summer now, and it's gonna, I believe, start running this weekend. I'll let them tell you that for sure, but it's their story. I'll take it from here. Maya and Sarah, tell us all about it. Well, don't tell us all about it. Tell us just enough about it so people still want to read. Whoever would like to go first.
Yeah, I'll start us off. So I kind of talked about this a couple weeks ago when we originally thought the series was going to run. So listeners that listened to episodes a couple weeks ago, you might have already heard a little bit of this. So I won't cover too much of what I said before in that. But basically, Sarah and I are looking at how Iowa has shifted politically between 2012 and 2024. So over the past 12 years, Obviously, this is not surprising. This is not groundbreaking news. This is very well known, but we really wanted to dig into it, highlight it, and talk to folks in these communities that have seen the largest shifts. So we're focusing on a couple specific counties that have seen the largest shift. They're mostly or all in Northwest Iowa. We just took the 3 that swung the furthest right for President Trump in the last few presidential elections from Obama in 2012. And that's Howard, Chickasaw, and Jackson counties. I've said my spiel a little bit. Sarah, do you want to add?
Oh, I was just going to say Northeast Iowa.
Oh, did I say Northwest?
That's all right.
Oh, I apologize. Northwest Iowa's
Yeah, there's
as
that.
red as it can get.
Big swing for Sioux County in the past couple cycles.
Yeah. So Northeast Iowa. Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, that's what we're looking at. We're looking, when talking to folks, we heard a lot about heightened political polarization, more tense conversations and dialogue around politics, people feeling wary and kind of feeling left behind by both national political parties, especially the Democratic Party, specifically the National Party in these rural areas where there were more people keep on saying, JFK or Kennedy Democrats. A lot of those people we're learning tended to shift more, swing more towards President Trump when he was on the ballot. And yeah, just looking at how these places are kind of navigating the current political climate and kind of where that swing came from.
Yeah, one story that we thought was particularly compelling that's kind of leading our first story. We talked to a county Democratic organizer in Chickasaw County, Tammy Hout, and so she has done a lot of political advocacy related to people with HIV/AIDS. And so she's advocated for more funding for people who are under or uninsured to afford HIV medications. She's advocated for lessening criminal penalties for people who have HIV. And so she's a lot of experience with advocating politically. She's been a Democrat for a while, advocated for political causes, and raised her son to be a Democrat, and he voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016, and then he graduated high school, got out on his own, got married, started a family, and he really started to notice prices go up. He went out on job sites, and people around him were more conservative, and then he voted for Trump in the last 2 elections. So their dynamic was interesting, just being in a family that is split politically, and between somebody who is a very staunch Democrat, and then somebody who sees things more on the economy, and sees the Republicans as doing better on the economy and handling prices, and somebody who's seen as better on the pocketbook. So and that was really kind of representative, I think, of a lot of different Republicans that we talked to, that or people who said that they voted a Republican, that they just are getting away from even like cross ballot voting, and so are just I think it was emblematic of the shift of some voters in Iowa to Trump over the last 10 years.
Yeah, I think the relationship was also something that we wanted to centerpiece because of the kind of polarizing nature of it, in terms of that, unlike a lot of families that are split and don't talk to each other about politics anymore, because that unfortunately is a circumstance nowadays, they still see each other. Tammy loves seeing her 3 grandchildren. Like, nothing will take her away from that. But it, you know, it has put more strain on the relationship, and it's just not something that they touch. And so it was just really interesting to talk to both of them and see what they thought of that kind of divide politically, and how that impacted their dynamic as a family, as mother and son. So
all right, good stuff. I'm looking forward to it. Saturday, Sunday, does it start? Do we know for sure yet?
Sunday.
Okay, very good. So, and there's a few stories that you're going to see. So, starting Sunday, and keep an eye out for more, and we'll maybe come back and talk about them a little bit next week too. Last little bit of housekeeping before we go. We are happy here on the On Iowa Politics podcast to see that we did not jinx Althea's Cyclones too much, although it was close, and they survived our efforts to jinx them by talking about the game last week. So we're happy for you there, Althea.
Thank you. And on that note, I would like to formally apologize to you and to Todd and to Tom. I think my exact words last week were, "You all suck." And
That's
and then a
pretty
big
close, yeah.
long rant. And actually Bailey edited out most of my big long rant. So I only owe you a partial apology, but I apologize. You do not suck. The Hawkeyes suck.
Erin, if I had been on last week, I would have said, and I will still say now after having the results, that there was a much better rivalry game on Saturday, and that was between my Mizzou Tigers and the Kansas Jayhawks. Much better than the slop that Iowa and Iowa State fans are having to
Okay,
pretend
it's
is good
after the
every year.
Cyhawk game, so I am like full of trash talk now, and I'm just going to say, did any of your beloved football players ace a 54-yarder?
That was a heck of a kick and the same kid that made last year's too, right?
Yes. When
Yeah.
I said my prayers that night, I said, "Thank you, Lord, for the air in my lungs and the, food in my stomach, and for Kyle Conrarty's right leg."
All right. That's great. All right. That's going to do it for this episode of On Iowa Politics. Thank you all for listening and sticking with us. If you're not already, please subscribe to us on your streaming service of choice, wherever you've been listening to this, or on YouTube, where you can smash the like button, or on the Gazette or lead newspaper websites. And now that you've listened to the On Iowa Politics podcast, make sure you also subscribe to the On Iowa Politics newsletter, where every morning in your inbox you'll receive all the latest politics and government coverage from our team. You can subscribe to that free newsletter at the Gazette's website, thegazette.com. And lastly, don't forget that the work of everyone you heard here today, including those big stories from Sarah and Maya coming up, can be found on the pages and websites of the Quad City Times, Muscatine Journal, Cedar Rapids Gazette, Waterloo Cedar Falls Courier, Mason City Globe Gazette, Council Bluffs Daily Non-Pareil, and the Sioux City Journal. But really quick here before I sign us off, I'm going to abuse my host duties here and offer my quick 2 cents on this week's tragic news. Very simply, and I'm not going to get into it too much, but I did want to do it at this moment in the podcast intentionally. Loyal and longtime listeners may have noticed that a little while back, a few months, I don't remember, I added a little sign-off line each week in which I wish that everyone will be well and be good. It's no big deal. It's just a little something I came up with, and I felt like I wanted to have just this little consistent sign-off for each show. While I don't consider it a big deal, it also wasn't an accident. It was something that I gave a little bit of thought to, and being in the news business, and everybody here can talk about this to varying degrees. It's not uncommon to see the darker side of humanity for us, and so I constantly find myself in those moments wanting and hoping for the best for people, for as little of that darkness as possible. And so it occurred to me when trying to come up with a sign off that that the most basic thing that I can hope for people is that we're all safe and healthy. Everything else is a bonus, but if everybody can be safe and healthy, we're in pretty good shape. And so that's where Be Well came from. And then knowing that being safe and healthy is part environment, part luck, but also part how we treat each other. That's where I came up with the Be Good part. So with that backstory in mind, and again reflecting on the tragic events of this week, while I mean it each and every week, I mean it a little more this week. When I say, for Tom Barton, Maya Marchel Hoff, Sarah Watson, Jared McNett, Althea Cole, Todd Dorman, and our guest producer this week, Becky Gardner, and our great regular producer, Bailey Sheehan, I'm Erin Murphy. Please be well, everyone, and please be good.